Large language models are everywhere, and they can be absolutely amazing, but wow, can they also get things spectacularly wrong? So today, we're going to look at something called RAG, a system that's basically teaching AI a really simple but totally game-changing habit: how to check its facts first. Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty simple question. Imagine your kid asks you this. Seems easy enough, right? You probably think you know the answer. Well, it turns out this exact kind of question reveals the single biggest problem with large language models, and also the brilliant way we're starting to solve it.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with that brilliant but flawed robot brain to see why these things make mistakes. Then we'll look at how a person would just use common sense to get it right. That's going to lead us straight to RAG, the tech that copies that exact process. We'll break down how it works, cover the pros and cons, and then wrap it all up with what this means for, well, the future of knowing anything. So let's get right into the problem. See, a normal large language model is kind of like a person answering a trivia question based on something they learned decades ago. It's just relying on its original training. And that knowledge, it can get pretty dusty.
So if someone asks you about the moons off the top of your head, you might go, "Oh, I know this one. The answer is Jupiter. It's got 88 moons." And you'd say it with so much confidence, because it feels right, but it's totally wrong. And that is exactly how a standard LLM works. It's just recalling patterns from its memory without ever stopping to think, hey, has the world changed since I learned this? And this one little mistake really shines a light on two fundamental problems with a standard LLM. First, its knowledge is basically frozen in time. New discoveries are happening all the time, but the AI is stuck in the past. And second, it can't show its work. It just gives you an answer with no source, so you have no way of knowing if you should actually trust it. Okay, so if we know our own memory can be a bit unreliable, what do? We have a strategy that's so simple, so intuitive, we don't even really think about it. So you're faced with that question from your kid and you feel just a little bit of doubt creep in. What's the smart move here? You wouldn't just state that old memory as if it's a solid fact, would you? Of course not. You'd pull out your phone, you'd do a quick search, and you'd check a trustworthy source, maybe NASA's website. You'd look for the latest, most up-to-date info. And that simple act, looking something up before you answer, that is the whole key.
And that very human instinct, that impulse to just look it up first, that is exactly what engineers have now taught large language models to do. The technology is called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or for short, RAG.
Now, the name itself kind of tells you everything you need to know. Generation? That's the part LLMs are already great at, generating text. The real magic is in that retrieval augmented part. It just means we've beefed up the whole process by adding a brand new first step. The AI retrieves fresh facts from an outside source before it even tries to answer. So, what does this new workflow actually look like? How does it work under the hood? It's really a fundamental change in how the AI comes up with an answer. Think of it like this. A standard LLM is like a closed book. It only knows what was printed on its pages when it was made. A RAG system, though, that's more like a researcher with a library card and a high-speed internet connection. It still has its own internal knowledge, but it can also go out to an external place, like the web or a company's private documents, to find the absolute latest facts. So here's the play-by-play. Step 1, you ask your question. But instead of the LLM just blurting out an answer, the RAG system hits pause. First, it goes and retrieves relevant articles or documents from its data store. Then, and this is the really clever part, it bundles the facts it just found with your original question, creating this new supercharged prompt. And only then does it hand that bundle to the LLM and say, okay, now generate an answer based only on this fresh, verified info. Now, as you can probably guess, this whole new process has some incredible payoffs that directly fix the problems we talked about at the beginning. But, like any technology, it's not some magic wand. There is a catch. So let's look at how RAG actually solves those big problems. That out-of-date information? The fix is so simple. You don't have to retrain the entire massive AI. You just update the external documents it's reading from. Way cheaper. And what about not having sources? Well, because the AI's answer is based on specific documents it just pulled, it can now show you its work. It can cite its sources, which massively cuts down on those hallucinations, those times an AI just confidently makes stuff up. And by the way, the correct answer to that question about moons? It's Saturn, with 146 confirmed moons, at least as of right now. that number changes as we find new ones. A standard LLM would be stuck on the old data forever, but a RAG system can just go out and pull today's correct number, just like that. And check this out, here's another huge benefit. If the RAG system goes to its data store and can't find anything relevant to what you asked, it can be designed to do something incredibly smart. Just say, I don't know. Instead of inventing a plausible but totally false answer, it can just admit the limits of its knowledge. That's a huge step. But here is the catch we mentioned. The entire system, the whole thing, depends on how good that first retrieval step is. If the retriever can't find the right document, or if it pulls back junk information, the LM is either going to give you a bad answer, or it'll say, I don't know, even when the answer is actually in there somewhere. That retriever has to be top-notch. So why does all this matter so much? Because RAG isn't just some clever technical fix. It really represents a major step forward in how we think about and how we interact with artificial intelligence. When you boil it all down, RAG is all about making AI more grounded, more accurate, and just more accountable. By forcing it to show its work, we're slowly turning it from this mysterious black box into a transparent tool where we can actually follow its logic and maybe even start to trust it. And, this field is moving so fast. Right now, researchers are working hard on both sides of this equation. They're trying to make the retriever way smarter at finding that one perfect needle in the haystack of data. And they're making the generator much better at weaving that information into a truly helpful, nuanced answer. Which kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. In a world that is just drowning in information, we've built these incredible AIs that can confidently answer almost anything you throw at them. But maybe, just maybe, the greatest leap forward isn't teaching them to know more, but teaching them the wisdom to recognize what they don't.